No one could save her from the venom. Until I took matters into my own hands. The air was still when the team landed on the dusty alien plane. Their mission was simple: scan the ruins, collect data, and leave before nightfall. The sun here was a dull red ball, casting long shadows over the jagged stone structures that rose like broken teeth from the ground. It should have been routine. It should have been safe. Commander Alara moved ahead, her scanner humming as she read the strange markings on the stones. Behind her, Captain Rin, the only human in the squad, kept his rifle ready, scanning the horizon. The rest of the team, 2 alien scouts and a medic, spread out in a careful line. They had done missions like this before, but something about today felt wrong. Too quiet, too still. The wind shifted, bringing a faint metallic scent. Rin's instincts screamed. He opened his mouth to warn the team, and then the attack came. Shadows burst from the ruins, like living smoke. The enemy moved fast, too fast, their shapes blurring between stone pillars. Bolts of energy streaked through the air, scorching the ground. The scouts returned fire, their plasma rifles flashing blue light against the red sky. The medic ducked. Behind a boulder, Alara turned, and that was when it happened. A dart, thin as a needle, flew out of the shadows. It struck her in the neck. She gasped, dropping her scanner, her hands clawing at the tiny wound. Rin fired into the shadows, driving the attackers back. But his eyes were locked on her. He could already see the venom working. Her skin around the wound was turning dark green, the color spreading fast like ink in water. The medic was at her side in seconds, scanning her vitals. "It's Venom," the medic said, his voice tight. "Adaptive strain, unknown origin, no cure in our database." Ilara's breathing became shallow, her eyes glassy. "She has minutes," the medic added. Rin's jaw clenched. The team fought hard, but the attackers seemed to melt away into the ruins, disappearing as suddenly as they had appeared. The dust settled, but the damage was done. Alara lay on the ground, shaking. Her lips moved as if trying to speak, but no sound came out. "Help her," Rin snapped, kneeling beside the medic. "I can't," the medic said, scanning again. "The venom changes its structure every few seconds. It's impossible to counter in time." Rin's heart pounded. He had seen alien bioweapons before, but nothing like this. He had seen wounds, burns, infections, all treatable if you had the right equipment. But this was alive inside her, learning, adapting, killing. The scouts returned from the ruins, weapons ready. "No sign of them," one said. "They came for her, not for us." That chilled Rin even more. Why target her specifically? Why not just kill them all? Ilara's hand gripped his wrist, weak but deliberate, her eyes locked on his. There was fear in them, but also trust. It was as if she knew he would not let her go without a fight. The medic shook his head, already packing up his gear. "We need to evacuate. She's not going to make it." Rin looked at him, then back at her. "No," he said. "I'm not leaving her." Overhead, the red sun dipped lower, shadows stretching across the ruins like grasping fingers. Somewhere far off, there was a distant rumble, maybe thunder, maybe something worse. Time was slipping away, every second. The venom moved deeper. Every heartbeat brought her closer to the end. Rin's mind raced. Standard anti-venoms would fail. Alien tech wouldn't adapt fast enough. But humans had survived poisons that wiped out entire alien species. They had a biology no one in this galaxy fully understood, and maybe, just maybe, he could use that. He took a deep breath. If no one else can save her, he thought, then I will. The medic looked at him, confused. "What are you planning?" "Something dangerous," Rin said, lifting her into his arms. "And something only I can do." With the scouts covering him, he carried her toward the far side of the ruins. He had one chance, one crazy, desperate chance, and he was going to take it. Somewhere in those ruins was what he needed. Somewhere in the wreckage of the old alien wars lay a cure no one else would dare to use. And if it killed him, so be it. because no one could save her from the venom. Until he took matters into his own hands. Rin moved fast through the ruins, his boots kicking up red dust with every step. The weight in his arms felt heavier with each breath. Not because Alara was large, but because every second he carried her was another second the venom spread. Her skin was burning hot now, her pulse a weak flutter under his fingers. The scouts followed close behind, scanning the shadows for signs of another attack. The medic's voice came through the coms, low and urgent. You have maybe 10 minutes before her organs start to fail. Rin didn't answer. Talking would only waste time. The ruins stretched ahead like a maze, twisting corridors of broken stone and shattered metal. Some of these structures were older than the cities on Earth, built by hands that had vanished long before humans learned to stand. Somewhere in here, there was a crash site, a forgotten scar from the last Great War. Rin had read about it in an old report, a place where alien tech had fused with something alive. It was dangerous, unstable, and no one had ever tried to harvest it since, which made it perfect. His breath echoed in the silence. No birds, no wind, just the crunch of their boots and Ilara's shallow, ragged breathing. The scouts exchanged nervous glances. Even they knew this part of the ruins was not safe. Strange marks were carved into the walls, not writing, but claw scratches, deep and deliberate. Something had lived here, and maybe still did. Rin slowed, his ears catching a faint hum. It was ahead, just beyond a collapsed wall. He handed Alara to one of the scouts, then pushed away the rubble, revealing a dark chamber lit only by a sickly green glow. The air smelled like burnt metal and wet earth. At the center, growing out of a cracked alien console, was what he had been looking for. A living mass of translucent strands, pulsing like veins, wrapped around a core of faintly glowing liquid. It was beautiful and wrong all at once. He stepped closer, feeling the warmth radiating from it. His heart pounded. If the old reports were true, this organism could adapt to any toxin, but only by merging with a living host first. That host would suffer, maybe die, but the bonded organism could produce an antidote in minutes. It was a gamble with no second chance. The scout holding Alara spoke quietly. If you touch that thing, it will kill you. Rin didn't look back. It will kill her, if I don't, he said. The scout didn't argue. He took off his gloves, the cold air biting at his skin. The hum grew louder as he reached out, his fingertips brushing the surface of the living strands. They reacted instantly, twisting around his hand like vines, piercing the skin with dozens of tiny, burning bites. Pain shot up his arm, bright and blinding. He gritted his teeth, forcing himself not to pull away. The organism pulsed faster, threads crawling up his wrist, burrowing under the skin. He could feel it moving inside him, hot and alive. His vision swam, the world tilting and flickering. The scouts stepped back, weapons ready, not sure if they were about to lose him too. He dropped to one knee, every muscle in his body shaking, and then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the pain stopped. The glow in the chamber dimmed, the organism retreating into his veins, as if hiding. He was breathing hard, but still alive, for now. He staggered to his feet and took Alara back into his arms. Her skin was almost gray now, her lips trembling with every shallow breath. He didn't know how much time the organism needed to work. All he knew was that they had to move before the next wave of attackers came, because if the enemy had targeted her once, they wouldn't stop until they finished the job. Rin gave a single order, his voice cold and steady. Let's get her out. The path out of the chamber was darker than before. The green glow from the organism had faded, leaving only the weak light from the scout's gear. Rin's legs felt heavy, as if something inside him was pulling him back toward the ruins. Every step sent a strange heat through his veins. He didn't know if it was the organism working or starting to kill him. He didn't care. Alara's breathing was slowing, and that was all that mattered. They moved quickly, twisting through narrow passages of stone and metal. Above them, somewhere far away, the sound of distant weapons echoed. The enemy was still out there, and Rin was sure they knew exactly where he was going. This wasn't a random attack. This was a hunt. The medic's voice came over the comms. Again, sharper this time. Her heart rate is dropping fast. Rin, whatever you did, better start working now. Rin didn't answer. His jaw locked tight. The heat inside him was spreading, crawling up his chest, down his legs, even into his head. It was hard to think straight. He could almost hear something whispering. Not in words, but in feelings. The organism was alive in more ways than he had expected. A faint light flickered at the end of the corridor. The scouts reached it first, stepping into a wide-open area filled with jagged pillars and pools of still water. The reflections rippled, though nothing had touched them. Rin felt his grip on Alara tighten, his eyes scanning the shadows. Something was moving in here. A sound came low and wet, like the drag of something heavy across stone. One of the scouts turned, raising his rifle. Then a shape pulled itself from behind a pillar, its body long and twisted, its skin the same mottled green as the venom in Elara's veins. It moved on to many legs, each tipped with claws that clicked against the stone. Its face, if it could be called that, was a smooth surface, broken only by a slit that opened to reveal rows of needle-like teeth. Rin didn't hesitate. He passed Alara to the other scout and stepped forward. Rifle raised. The thing hissed, the pools of water rippling harder. The air smelled sharp now, like acid. It lunged. Rin fired, the plasma blast lighting the pillars. In brief flashes, the creature screeched, twisting mid-air and vanishing back into the shadows. The sound of its claws scraped around them. Circling, hunting. It wasn't just here to kill. It was guarding something. Another ripple in the water made Rin turn his head. From the far side of the chamber, more shapes began to emerge. Moving low and fast, the scouts opened fire. Bolts of blue slicing through the darkness. The creatures scattered, then regrouped, testing the edges of their fire. Rin's heat surged again, the organism inside him almost burning now. And then something strange happened. The nearest creature stopped moving and stared at him. The others froze too, their smooth faces tilting in the same direction. They weren't looking at the scouts. They were looking at him. His grip on the rifle tightened. The whispering inside his head grew louder, almost like a pulse. For a second, the creatures didn't attack. They simply stood there, as if waiting for something. Then, without warning, they sank back into the shadows and were gone. The water became still again. The scouts looked at him, confused. Why did they leave? One asked. Rin shook his head, not trusting himself to speak. He had a feeling he already knew, and it had everything to do with what was now flowing in his blood. They moved on quickly, stepping out of the chamber into the broken streets beyond. The ruins. The sun was almost gone now, the red sky deepening into night. And somewhere far off, a new sound began to rise. Not claws, not weapons, but a long, low howl that didn't belong to anything he had ever heard before. Night fell fast on the alien plain. The last light of the red sun slipped behind the jagged horizon, leaving only the cold glow of distant stars. Rin could feel the temperature drop, but inside him, the heat from the organism was burning hotter than ever. It was like carrying a small sun under his skin, pulsing with every heartbeat. Alara stirred faintly in his arms, her lips parting as if to speak, but no words came. Her eyes opened for a second, glassy and unfocused. Before closing again, the medic's voice came through, urgent. Her heart is barely holding Rin. Whatever's in you needs to finish adapting now. The ruins thinned, giving way to open ground littered with fragments of old machines, half-buried engines, shattered hull plates, and broken towers jutted out of the soil like bones. Somewhere among this wreckage was the processing unit he needed. Without it, the organism's antidote would remain inside him, useless to her, and every step they took was a gamble that the enemy would return. A sudden clang of metal echoed through the wreckage. The scouts froze, scanning the darkness. Rin shifted his weight, keeping Alara close while raising his rifle. Another sound followed, heavier this time, like something massive stepping between the ruins. Shadows shifted at the edge of their lights, but no shape revealed itself. Then a voice cut through the cold air, deep and guttural, speaking in a language Rin didn't understand. The scouts tensed, whispering a name under their breath, a name Rin had heard only once before, in war reports that ended badly for everyone involved. A tall figure stepped into view, its armor black and jagged, almost absorbing the light. Its helmet had no visor, just a smooth surface with faint red lines glowing like cracks. In one hand, it carried a long spear, tipped with a blade that shimmered in strange colors. In the other, it held a device, a small glass container with a swirling green liquid inside. The liquid moved like it was alive, pressing against the glass whenever Rin looked at it. The figure spoke again, slower this time, its voice vibrating in Rin's chest. The medic's translator buzzed in his ear. "Return the human female and walk away, or your death will be slow." Rin didn't answer. The heat in his body surged, and for the first time, he felt something like pressure in his hands, a tingling under his skin. The figure took a step closer, planting the spear into the ground with a metallic crack. It pointed at Alara, then at the container. The meaning was clear. They had made the venom, and they could control it. Rin's grip tightened on his rifle. "You had your chance," he muttered. Before the figure could react, one of the scouts fired, the plasma bolt hitting its armor with a sharp flash. The shot barely left a mark. The figure moved with sudden speed, crossing the ground in a blur, striking the scout with the spear shaft and sending him crashing into the wreckage. The other scout fired, but the armored enemy twisted, the blade slicing through the rifle as if it were paper. Rin stepped forward, Alara still in his arms. The heat inside him flared until it was almost unbearable. The figure stopped and tilted its head, as if sensing it. Rin didn't know if the organism was ready, but he knew they wouldn't survive this fight unless he acted now. He set Alara down gently behind a piece of hull plating, then turned back toward the enemy. The whispering in his head returned, louder than ever. He felt his pulse in his fingertips, his skin glowing faintly under the armor plates on his arms. The figure lunged, spear raised. Rin moved without thinking, catching the spear's shaft with one hand, the heat from his grip burning the metal black. The enemy froze for just a second, enough for Rin to twist the weapon free and drive it into the ground beside them. The impact sending a sharp crack through the wreckage. The figure stepped back, its red lines glowing brighter, and for the first time, Rin thought he saw hesitation. He didn't know if it was fear or recognition, but whatever it was, it meant one thing: they hadn't expected a human to survive the organism, let alone wield it. Somewhere behind him, Alara coughed weakly. Time was running out, and now, so was his control. Rin's hands shook, not from fear, but from the force building inside him. The heat in his blood had changed, becoming something sharper, something alive. It was no longer just burning, it was moving, coiling under his skin like liquid fire. The enemy warrior circled him slowly, the red lines on its armor pulsing as if sensing the change. Rin knew he didn't have much time before the organism took full control. If that happened, he might not be able to come back. But if he waited too long, Alara would never open her eyes again. The medic's voice came faint over the comms. "Rin, your vitals are spiking beyond human limits. Whatever you're doing, finish it now." The armored figure lunged again, swinging the spear in a wide arc. Rin caught the blade in his bare hand, the metal sizzling where his fingers closed around it. The enemy pulled back fast, a hiss escaping its helmet. Rin could feel the organism reacting to the danger, surging toward the wound in his palm, sealing it instantly. It was working faster now, adapting to him as much as he was adapting to it. His eyes flicked toward Alara, still lying behind the broken hull plate, her breaths shallow and uneven. The container in the enemy's hand caught his attention again, the swirling green liquid pressing against the glass, Some instinct told him that was part of the Venom's control system. If he could get it, he might be able to force the organism in his blood to create the antidote faster. The warrior seemed to realize his focus and shifted the container to its other hand, gripping it tight. Rin didn't wait. He dashed forward, closing the gap in seconds. His movements faster than any human reflex should allow. The enemy tried to stab, but Rin twisted under the blade and slammed his fist into the warrior's chest. The impact rang out like a hammer on steel, sending the figure stumbling back. Step. Rin grabbed for the container, fingers brushing the glass, but the warrior jerked it away, smashing an armored elbow into his side. Pain exploded through his ribs, but the organism rushed to dull it, his vision sharpening instead of fading. The fight became a blur of motion. Sparks from plasma fire in the distance, the clang of metal on metal, the hiss of the warrior's strange breath. Rin felt every impact, but also felt the organism shifting, adapting, learning the enemy's rhythm with each second. The warrior's strikes became easier to read, and then the moment came. The spear swung wide. Rin caught the shaft, twisted it free, and drove the blunt end into the warrior's helmet. Cracking one of the glowing red lines, the enemy staggered, its grip loosening just enough for Rin to rip the container from its hand. The glass felt ice cold against his burning skin. Without thinking, he crushed it in his palm, the green liquid spilling over his hand and soaking into his skin like it was alive. The sensation was instant, a violent surge through his arm, meeting the heat of the organism already inside him. It was like two storms colliding. His knees buckled. His vision went white for a heartbeat. Then the heat turned into something else, a rushing, powerful clarity that filled every nerve. He could feel the antidote forming in his blood. Behind him, Ilara's faint breath caught. Her body was reacting to something. Rin knew what he had to do, without hesitation. He knelt beside her, pulling a small injector from the medic's dropped kit. He pressed it to his own arm, drawing a vial of his blood now mixed with the adapted organism. Her skin was cold under his fingers as he lifted her arm and injected the liquid into her vein. For a moment, nothing happened. The night was silent, except for the faint hum of the ruins and the distant crack of gunfire. Then she gasped, her chest rising in a deep, sharp breath. Her skin shifted from gray to pale, the dark veins fading slowly. Rin's shoulders dropped with relief, but the victory was short-lived. The warrior was already recovering, the cracks in its armor glowing brighter, its stance low and ready. Rin stood again, the heat in his body now fully under his control. He didn't know how long it would last, but he knew one thing. They weren't leaving without finishing this fight. The warrior moved first, its armor splitting along hidden seams as razor-edged blades unfolded from its forearms. The red glow along its body brightened until it looked like molten metal. Rin stepped forward to meet it, the heat inside him answering with its own pulse. He could feel the organism in his blood reacting to the enemy, reading it the way a predator reads prey. There was no fear left in him, only focus. The ground between them blurred as they clashed. Sparks lit the dark like bursts of lightning, the sound of metal and energy echoing across the ruins. Every strike from the warrior was heavy enough to break stone, but Rin moved faster than it expected, twisting, ducking, countering. He could sense its attacks before they came, not with his eyes, but with something deeper. The organism's whisper in his mind had become a steady rhythm, guiding each movement. Behind him, Ilara was sitting up slowly, still weak but alive. Her eyes followed the fight, confusion and shock mixing in her gaze. The medic was beside her, now, checking her vitals, his own hands shaking from what he was seeing. A human moving like this was not supposed to be possible. The warrior shifted tactics, leaping high and bringing both blades down in a strike meant to cleave Rin in two. Rin caught the impact on his forearms, the heat in his blood flaring so bright. It made the air shimmer. The metal of the enemy's blades hissed where they touched his skin. With a roar, he shoved back, sending the armored figure crashing into a half-buried engine. The wreckage groaned, sparks shooting into the air as the warrior rolled to its feet. It charged again, this time faster, its movements unpredictable. Rin matched its speed, his body responding without hesitation. He ducked under a slash, slammed his shoulder into its chest, and grabbed one of the extended blades. With a twist, he tore it free, the weapon glowing faintly in his grip. The warrior hissed and lunged, but Rin spun the stolen blade in his hand and drove it into one of the glowing red cracks on its armor. The reaction was instant. The glow flickered, the armor pulsing like it was in pain. The ground shook as the warrior staggered back, its breathing harsh and uneven. Rin didn't give it time to recover. He closed the distance, each step sending shockwaves through the dirt, and struck again, this time at its helmet. The blade punched through the glowing lines, and the light inside dimmed sharply. The warrior dropped to one knee, its hands clawing at the wound. For a moment, it looked like it might fall, but then a deep sound rolled through the air, not from the warrior, but from somewhere far beyond the ruins. It was a call, low and drawn out, that seemed to make the ground itself vibrate. The warrior froze, then straightened slowly, backing away instead of attacking, its head tilted toward the horizon as if listening. Then it looked at Rin one last time, a slow, deliberate motion that felt like a warning. Without another word, it turned and vanished into the shadows. Moving with impossible speed, Rin stood there, his chest heaving. The stolen blade still in his hand, the heat in his body began to fade, leaving only a deep ache in his muscles. He turned toward Alara, who was now standing with help from the medic. She took a shaky step toward him, her voice quiet but steady. "It's not over, is it?" Rin shook his head slowly. "No," he said. "They're calling for something bigger." In the distance, the low call sounded again, closer this time, and somewhere in the night, the ruins began to answer back. The call came again, so close now that the air seemed to shiver with it. The ground under Rin's boots trembled, dust drifting down from the broken ruins around them. The scouts exchanged tense glances, weapons up, scanning the dark horizon. Alara steadied herself against the hull plate, her eyes locked on Rin. Whatever was coming, she could feel it too. Then the night split open with light, not from the sky, but from beneath the ground. Thin beams of blue-white energy shot upward, through cracks in the soil, tracing glowing lines and patterns too perfect to be natural. The ruins began to hum, the same low vibration Rin had heard in his skull since bonding with the organism. He realized with a sharp chill, the ruins weren't dead, they were waking up. The medic's voice was tight. "We need to move, now." But Rin didn't move. He could feel something pulling at him, tugging at the heat inside his veins. It wasn't just the organism, it was the ruins themselves, responding to it, the same way the creatures had, the same way the armored warrior had. He wasn't an intruder anymore. He was a part of whatever this place had been waiting for. From the far side of the plain, the armored warrior reappeared. It wasn't alone this time. Behind it came 5 more figures, each carrying the same jagged armor, their red lines glowing brighter than before. But they didn't attack. They stopped at the edge of the glowing patterns in the ground, watching silently. The first warrior raised its hand and pressed it to the center of its chest, a gesture that almost looked like respect. Then it spoke, and the translator cracked with static before a single sentence came through. "You have awakened it." Ilara's eyes widened. Awakened what? Before Rin could answer, the ground behind him split apart, the soil falling away to reveal a massive shape rising from below. It wasn't a ship, and it wasn't a building. It was alive, a giant form of pale metal and living tissue, its surface pulsing with light in time with Rin's heartbeat. The hum grew louder until it became a deep, steady tone that filled the air. The organism inside him reacted violently, his body almost lifting from the force of it. In his mind, the whisper he had heard for hours finally formed into words. "We remember you." The towering shape shifted, and for a moment Rin thought he saw a face in the pattern of lights, not human, not alien, but something older, the armored warriors. All knelt as the tone deepened. Ilara's voice trembled. Rin, what is it? He stared at the massive being, feeling the heat in his veins match its rhythm perfectly. I think, he said slowly, it's the reason the venom was made. The medic stepped forward, his voice sharp with fear. We need to leave before it decides what to do with us. But the ground around them was already sealing, the glowing lines closing into a perfect circle that trapped them inside. The warriors stood again, their red lines fading to black, as if their purpose here was complete. The giant being lowered its head toward Rin, the air pressing heavy on his chest, and in that crushing silence, a single thought cut through his mind. No one could save her from the venom. Until you took matters into your own hands, now you will save us all.